Welcome everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. My name is Matt Braun. I'm the Services Sales Manager here at Kyloe Partners. So to introduce everyone speaking on the session today, we'll go from left to right and I'll ask you all to turn your cameras and microphones on as we go. So Matt, do you want to go first?
Yeah, seamless. I'm still pumped after that intro video. That really gets the blood going, doesn't it? That drum beat. Yeah, it's Matt Comber. I'm the CEO of SourceFlow. We build revenue generating recruitment websites and marketing software, and we're a Bullhorn marketplace partner.
Thank you. Gordon?
Hey everyone, my name is Gordon. I'm the head of sales at Idaboo. We provide a job distribution platform, allowing recruiters to post jobs to job boards, social media channels, your own company website, and then delivering a candidate management tool to filter candidates back into your Bullhorn system. We're also a Bullhorn marketplace partner.
Thank you. Lisa?
As a Bullhorn marketplace partner, it's a good job I am, otherwise I'd be feeling left out. We work with recruiters to help them with their automation and their staff productivity through training and also technology and marketing ideas.
Excellent, thank you. And Rob?
Hello, I'm Rob Greening, Sales Manager here at Cloud Call. Cloud Call, we're a telephony provider that provides native telephony integration with Bullhorn that ultimately allows recruiters to make and receive calls directly within Bullhorn whilst we automate the data capture for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. So tech stack. So what do all these partners do? Essentially, why are they here? Why are they a part of this webinar? You can see we've got kind of a funnel system here. So at the very top, attracting candidates into the CRM and getting them entered in there. We've got Idaboo and we've got SourceFlow. Then we've got Barclay Jones as part of the recruiting and training piece. And then we've got Cloud Call as the communication piece. And obviously, Kyloe ourselves, I'll cover the the tools that we offer as part of that and the things that we see along the way and how we can help with those. So first question, we've got various questions for the people on the session today. So first question is for you, Gordon. So based on your experience working with Bullhorn, how can data quality and duplicates affect revenue and efficiency?
Massively. I think Bullhorn actively encourage their users to use Bullhorn as a single source of truth effectively. So if the data that you've got in there is of low quality, if you've got lots of duplicate records in there, then effectively you're fundamentally impacting your ability to get to the best candidates quickly. So I mean, right now we're in a market where candidates are thin on the ground. So if you've got, even in the worst case scenario, 2 candidate records for the same person and none of those records are complete, then ultimately you're just leaving that door open to a competitor getting to that candidate before you do. You're probably going to incur extra cost in the business because you're going to go and start advertising the rollout to try and find that candidate that's potentially already sitting in your database. So they can cause a huge problem and a financial problem for the business as well.
Yeah, and just on one of those points that you mentioned, I suppose then question for you, Matt, what's the impact of poor data quality on the reputation of a brand?
Yeah, I mean, brand's probably the biggest asset that you have, right, as a business. Like, it's your name in the market, and especially if you work in like niche markets or anything like that, which I know a lot of recruiters do, your brand is incredibly important. So if you think about duplicates, where you could have candidates or clients receiving calls from maybe multiple consultants because there's different versions of a record that exist in the CRM. It could be candidates who receive multiple emails, with maybe, like Gordon said, different quality of data on each of them, like high name. When they first email, they might have high the correct data on it. It doesn't take long for that type of stuff to go around and start to really impact your brand when candidates start talking or clients won't work with you because of that brand reputation that, you're just like a spammy shop, if you like, that's sending information out. Other things, it leads to things like service issues around brands, so slow responses because the data isn't in the right area, or, you're trying to fix data quality and inaccurate responses as well. And then longer term, the damage is things like sending out responses to candidates maybe that you've placed, where you're sending out incorrect emails to them, which kind of look like you've never seen the candidate before. And maybe we've got that where you've received an email from somebody and you're actually already a customer. And then it's, hey, would you like to buy from us? You're like, I'm already a customer. That's a great example of where duplicates damage the kind of marketing and communication brand. And I think ultimately, as kind of maybe boring as it might sound, GDPR and your brand is still a thing. That GDPR exists, right? And actually just having, a lot of duplicate records, 2, 3, 4 duplicate records for a candidate or a client, it's going to get really difficult to manage for that. And you don't want to be known as a brand that's maybe breached based around actually just poor data quality. So they're some of the things that kind of come to mind there.
Absolutely, thank you. And well, covered both points there really well. But I suppose the third thing there is Lisa, who, by the way, has one of the most impressive Zoom backgrounds I've ever seen. Based on your experience in the staffing industry and from everything that you do with your clients and from a training perspective, how important is it that recruitment consultants have a single source of truth?
I think that the recruitment consultant model, the process hasn't really changed since I've been in the market for a while, but the tech and the data that they've got access to has massively increased. And what gives? So a movie came out earlier this year called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I grabbed that and went, that's like a database, or that's like what recruiters do when they're recruiting. And then I look at training and I go, how the hell are we supposed to train them on everything everywhere all at once? And then we say, single source of truth is pretty impressive. If we want to get more referrals and we want to train our recruiters to get them, if we want to prevent backdoor placements, if we want to do the good stuff and get on the phone more, we need a single source of truth to do that. And the problem is, if your database is riddled, it's probably a polite way of putting it, with dirty data, duplicate data, and I've got loads of stats for later on in the webinar, you could be on the edge of your seat. But how on earth are you supposed to train a recruiter in the current market to actually be super effective if they're looking everywhere for everything all at once?
Perfect, thank you. And I guess just from a Kyloe and from an implementation perspective, the importance of ongoing data management solutions. So obviously we have our own data management solution, but the importance of an ongoing one. This is not a one-off thing. You don't fix duplicates once and they go away forever. They're always going to be there. They're always going to come back. So you have to focus on the ongoing maintenance of that as well. Okay, final question on this topic for Rob. How do you think duplicates can affect customer experience?
Yeah, sure. So I think between Matt, Gordon and Lisa, they've already pointed out a lot of the things that you can do that will have a negative impact on the customer experience. So I suppose I'll answer this by talking about what constitutes to a good customer experience, or what is customer experience, and it should hopefully round everything off. So to me, a good customer experience is what I would deem a memorable experience. And I think it's very fair to say that a large portion of a recruiter's job is all around communication, and it's a role that's entirely built on the relationships that you have. So you're not the only person that the candidate's speaking to, so you've got to keep that experience memorable. And I think it's fair to say that relationships, they do build over time. Rapport certainly does. I think rapport stems from that emotional connection. So it's doing the simple things, following up when you say you will, referencing those past conversations that you've had with them. When you last spoke to them, they were getting married. Asking key questions based on information you've already previously gathered. Having all this information at your fingertips, is key. But and as what's been said now, this is why it's so important that you've got a single source of truth. Because there's nothing worse than fumbling around, not remembering the conversation as well as the candidate has. These are all the things that constitute what is such a memorable customer experience.
Brilliant, thank you. Right. So point 3 here. So where did duplicates come from? I'll probably start off because Kyloe's expertise here is in database migrations and database merges. That's kind of our bread and butter, if you will. That's what we do all day, every day. I think probably the main point on this is, or the most worrying point on this is, when you ask a client where duplicates have come from, how did you get this many duplicates? And they say that they don't know, because that's alarming. And that means that they'll generally have more than they even think that they've got. So we do a lot of database migrations. We do a lot of moving clients from any other CRM out there onto specifically Bullhorn, and it's one of the main things that comes up every single time. How can we get rid of our duplicates? Did you realize that you had this many? And we'll go through everyone else on the call here. So a question for you, Matt. What do people need to be aware of before getting a third-party solution and potentially introducing more duplicates into their system?
Yeah, so just to kind of circle back on your point there, Matt, the first thing is that duplicate data usually occurs because data is coming from multiple sources. It won't just be a website, that's that we focus on, but we might be sending data into a system where, potentially a candidate could also meet somebody at an event or come through social media. That's kind of the problem that we're highlighting here. I think there's a couple of key questions. One of them is who and how are the duplicates or the deduplication being managed through the software. So, for example, in some CRMs, the duplicate, the dedupe process might happen kind of CRM side, whereas in other CRMs, it might happen vendor side with us. So the way that we work with Bullhorn, their API is that we dedupe it before it kind of goes into the database. We're trying to like dedupe information at that point or match records rather than create duplicates kind of API side of things. On our side. So the first thing, it's good to establish like, how do you manage that? What does your integration actually look like in terms of managing data? Secondly, what systems are then in place to actually manage the deduplication process? And when we look at it, it's not just between, website and Bullhorn. It's between we focus heavily on the marketing side of things. So I'll speak about marketing, but it will be other systems, maybe finance systems and stuff. It's actually looking at, okay, this data gets sent into Bullhorn, but if that company also uses HubSpot, is there then another duplicate of that data that exists in HubSpot that isn't synced to Bullhorn that might exist in another system? So I think you've got to kind of look at the whole suite when you work with a vendor and say, like, what are you doing to actually sync this all together? And that's when we talk about tech stack, right? And I think you should be asking your vendors, what systems have you got in place to sync that together? So for example, we have a system and, it's a big part of what we do, which is, okay, data, candidate comes along, they apply for a job, we're sending that data into Bullhorn, right? But we're also sending it into HubSpot, for example. But then that record, you're talking about single point of truth, is synced between both. So if a consultant operates a record in the Bullhorn system, it's then going to go and it's going to update the phone number, for example, in the HubSpot system, and so on and so forth. And I think these are the key things. Sometimes people buy from vendors because they go, oh yeah, we can buy from you, but they have no way of managing this type of data. And I think it's experience in the industry, which is kind of a key thing. Like, it's being burnt that teaches you those things. So yeah, I think, where's the deduping happening and what's in place, what tech actually exists to dedupe it? I'd say they're kind of the big things for me.
Brilliant, thank you. And I guess now we've established where they come from. Lisa, question for you. Well, two questions actually. What's the importance of employees understanding why it's a problem, and what training gaps do you think that exist that cause duplicates?
I think there's several things that always go off in my mind with this, and the first thing that you've got is what we in the market would call minimum data standards, MDSs, where we're looking at what's really critical for data to be welcomed onto your system. So it's, for me, I like it when my clients are really touchy and precious about what they let land inside their systems. Not all data is equal. And for me, it's like, why would you have a load of dirty data on your system if you know that it decreases in value by 12% every year, or it costs you crazy amounts of money? So minimum data standards is really important. Be precious. And training your staff to understand what good actually looks like. We know this because we know that on average 250 candidates applied for a job, and this was before COVID, and probably only 10% of them, if at all, are viable. So what does that mean? The next thing, that there's a lot of talk online about normalization. Lovely word, but it's basic stuff like, how do we put in postcodes? How do we put in phone numbers? This stuff can really mess up a data stack. So if you normalize, if you create standards of how this data goes on, then silly little things like that can massively decrease duplicates as well. But the thing that's always at the heart of this for me is, when we talk about data cleanliness, it's really dull and boring, and we don't necessarily set KPIs on it, but we do set KPIs on how much money our recruiters make. But ultimately, data is relationships. And if you manage every byte of data on your system like it's capable of making you money, then you look at that data in a very different way. And relationships take time. They have processes, you don't necessarily get to first or fourth base straight away. So for me, the training piece here is minimum data standards, normalization, and then treating data like it could make you money if you looked after it. And then all of a sudden your relationship with data really, really changes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. So we've gone through where duplicates come from. Let's go through how to solve them. I'll come to both Gordon and Matt here. Gordon, I'll come to you first. So as part of your solution, Idibu, what do you have as part of your integration with Bullhorn to help prevent duplicates? Obviously, we've established that, you know, some are inevitable, but what do you have to limit that as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think following on from what Matt had said, it's how you go through that dedupe process. So if you think about using an Idibu as your job distribution tool, so you're sending all your adverts out to social media, to your job boards, to your source flow website, and then those ads are out there. Applications then flow back in via Idibu, back into Bullhorn. And we obviously make sure that if anyone's triggered in, so you're effectively using Idibu like a gatekeeper to your Bullhorn database. And anyone that you then trigger from Idibu inside Bullhorn to then land either in a shortlist or just land in the general candidate pool inside Bullhorn, we're deduping at that point. So we can pretty much eradicate any duplicate records that are coming from job boards, from social media, from your own website, and making sure that only those good candidates are actually getting through into your Bullhorn database as well, rather than having recruiters working out of different job boards and then having to manually create records, or having to work from inboxes and again having to manually create records that way. So using one single repository for all of your applications from all your external destinations with a robust deduping process in place already should eradicate any duplicate records coming in, certainly from your job adverts that you're posting.
Excellent, thank you. And Matt, same question to you.
Yeah, so we're closely linked to Idibu, and so I'd kind of follow on from everything that Gordon said there, in that where we are in the process is we're looking at making sure that firstly the duplicate never gets into the CRM from our side of thing, from at least from a website point of view. That's kind of what we try and catch. And I think that comes back to the point I was making earlier about understanding where the API kind of dedupes, you know, is it in CRM or is it outside of CRM? I think then it comes on to the point of having some specialist technology in place, like integration software. You know, integrations are kind of like a very invisible thing. They just exist. It's very difficult to kind of tangibly show somebody what an integration actually looks like. We're actually working on software now to visualize that process and kind of, you know, click and drag almost that process, or literally click and drag that process to show where candidates go from A to B. So what, from our point of view, in terms of how we solve it, is we're creating the integrations sensors kind of between Idibu, between them Bullhorn, and then those other systems, the other marketing systems that exist. And it's saying, right, we've got this candidate. The normalization that Lisa was talking about, like, does the data match? Is it normalized? Should it all be uppercase or lowercase? Will it match on those types of things? Is going to create a duplicate because there's a funny character in there? You know, what are we looking at here? And then how's that going to integrate? How's that going to dedupe? And then the kind of main thing that we're looking for is, you know, what basis are we actually deduping on? And that's that kind of normalization again, which is saying, okay, we've got a candidate record, yeah, and we've got a client record, and we're looking in, but what are the kind of key identifiers, or like the unique identifiers, GUIDs, you might call them, that exist between one system and another? Is it email address? Well, sometimes it can't just be email address, right? Because, you know, we've seen that go wrong. And sometimes IDs are great, but then your data kind of persists in systems based around ID. So it's kind of building like a data model in place that looks and says, actually, yeah, this is kind of intelligent enough to understand that we have this person in our database, and that actually what we're not doing is creating a new record, but our actual call here is going to update an existing record in the database. So, you know, there's kind of multiple ways, but I think really it's kind of about that integration center kind of feel to things in order to understand, you know, who's responsible. We deal with a lot of that top of funnel stuff. So I think a lot of it kind of falls on us, to be honest. And then the other systems, probably where Idibu sits as well, Gordon, we sit very kind of top of funnel. And then I think then the specialist technology that comes in under it is that kind of like backstop tech to remove it.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you both. So Lisa, coming to you, how can training help recruitment companies get rid of duplicates? So, you know, we've got them in there. How can the right instructions, the right training, the right process help them get rid of them?
Training for me is always going to be about what's in it for me, right? Trying to train recruiters to clean up the data. I'm not sure anyone's going to turn up to that course. And if they are, they're probably not going to be the major billers in the business. So for me, it's about what's in it for me. And it's about consistent, continuous, not just on your first day, not just on your second month, but continuous training around relationship management, using systems. We have a HIT mentality, high intensity interval training, not just hitting our staff, where we constantly are repeating what's in it for me messaging around data hygiene, but it's implicit, not explicit. What's explicit is how you make money from data. I've written some notes here, monetizing the data, right? Because we know that on average, 72% of candidates that are placed, you already had, you just didn't look for them in the right places. And maybe you advertised or did crazy amounts of other stuff before looking at what you already had. Maybe as well, if your current cohort of staff, and we know turnover and recruitment is not great, have lost faith in systems, then there's a journey that you need to go on to create more faith in that data and the processes. But that continuous, consistent training, continuous what's in it for me, continuous, if I clean my data, so what? Well, actually, if you do this, then this happens. Obviously, automation has a massive part to play in this as well. But from a training perspective, it's that continuous piece. And really establishing with the recruiter how their lives genuinely will be better if they cleaned up their data, and the quickest ways for them to do that with everything else the guys have said on the webinar.
Perfect, thank you. And just to round off section 4 here on how to solve, I guess, from a Kyloe perspective, we have our duplicate product, which will allow the merging of candidate contact company records as well. So there are, if you can't stop it at the source, and if you can't get rid of them any other way, then there's always the solution that Kyloe offers there for the duplicate tool to be able to do that as well. Okay, so section 5, benefits of getting rid of them. So I guess some of this, actually, Lisa, you probably just touched on in your previous point, but I'll ask you this question here. How can a cleaner system result in more revenue?
Okay, so, and obviously I'll say it's, is that a vanity stat or a sanity stat? It might be profit or whatever, but I look at the things that dirty data, lack of process, whatever you want to call it, and obviously lack of process can create dirty data and vice versa. But I look at, the average candidate, and these stats could have gone a little bit mad over COVID as well. The average good candidate is off the market within 10 days. That's like crazy speedy. That we know that recruiters can spend between 6 to 8 weeks looking for candidates that they've already got. On average, recruiters spend about a third of their week sourcing. I mean, these averages are lovely stats, aren't they? But in reality, what does that mean? More backdoor placements, less referrals, the need to hire more staff, which in the current market is difficult. And also, and it's something that made me giggle, I was remembering earlier on, and the word Raymond came into my mind from Kyloe. And when I thought of Raymond, whenever I think of Raymond, I always think of barnacles, because I did a webinar with him about 1400 million years ago about barnacle recruitment tech. And this was about stuff that you buy that kind of latches on, that you don't really need. And you've maybe not got the, excuse the language, balls to, or barnacles to get rid of. And data can be exactly the same. So for me, it's about increasing revenue, but it's ultimately about increasing profitability. It's ultimately about decreasing stress, which obviously all of that increases more money coming into the business. But you get your data model right, because it is a significant part of your business. I mean, people used to call data the new oil. I personally think that's wrong, because oil is a finite resource, as we are finding out. Whereas data, oh my God, just when you're looking at it, more appears. And actually, it can prevent your business from moving forward. I could go on all day about this, but ultimately for me, how can data increase more revenue? You treat your data like you treat your money, and you can invest in it, then it's going to make you more. I'll shut up now.
No, not at all. All good points. Thank you very much. Okay, Rob, on the subject of productivity then, how can clean data and getting rid of duplicates improve productivity?
Sure. Well, let me look at this from two perspectives. I suppose, firstly, from a recruiter's perspective, and then from the actual Bullhorn database itself. But look, as a recruiter, if you're calling multiple records, you're dialing the wrong number, you're emailing the wrong email address, not only does that waste time, but it also leads to missed opportunities. And the whole piecing of this information back together is, is time consuming. So again, that ties back to what we were saying earlier about having, a single source of truth on one record with all the correct information. Your productivity, it's really built from marginal gains, and it's all the small percentages that, add up to the bigger picture. And if, I'll use Cloud Call as an example for that. I'll use telephony as an example, because that's what we do, or something so minor but so significant. The average recruiter is calling 6-7 people an hour, right? Say you've got 8 hours in a day. If you can save, say, a minute to a minute and a half of time before you make that phone call, that's over an hour in someone's day and saved productivity just by having information that they need in front of them. If you've got 30 odd recruiters, that's 150 odd hours. Turn those hours into, they should be billable hours. It stems far greater than just your productivity, because time is money at the end of the day. And then if we look at this from the database perspective too, and Lisa just touched on this with automation, Bullhorn as an ecosystem, it's got the ability to connect amazing technologies that can automate all of those mundane tasks for you, all of those hugely time-consuming activities, but it's reliant on data. So sourcing candidates is only as hard as you make it, right? So if you've got all of the information in one place, not only are you more productive, but you can focus on having good quality conversations with the right people, whilst the other technologies in your database, Herefish, is nurturing these candidate pools for you and presenting you with opportunities. So there's a whole bigger picture with productivity. It's not just about the person that picks up the phone or sends the email. It's about how your database, how Bullhorn is using your technologies, and it's all reliant on clean data.
Absolutely, thank you. And so I'll touch on from a Kyloe perspective there. I'll touch on things that yourself and Lisa both mentioned there in automations. Obviously, automations is something that we get involved with a lot at Kyloe. If these things are extremely powerful. The power that it gives the consultant, from not doing anything themselves. Their admins are setting these automations up and they're just happening in the background. Data is getting updated, things are being sent out. If that data is not accurate, then that's touching on something that we said right at the very beginning, that is damaging your brand. I know that if for example I received 4 emails from something that I'd signed up to once, I would that would put me off dealing with that company again. If it's something that I'd signed up to a couple of times because I'd found a loophole in creating new accounts to get more free stuff, then that's separate. But if you've done it, you've innocently done it once and you end up getting multiple emails, then that's not something that you want. And also searching in Bullhorn as well. So, allows you to run more accurate searches, because if you're searching for the best candidates for a job and you're putting in your criteria, and one of your duplicate records, one of your 3, let's say, records has that criteria, but it only has part of the information, it might not get picked up in the search, and that person might miss out on the opportunity to get submitted or interviewed for a job that that they are capable of doing. So yeah, there's a lot there to go through. And just finally on this subject, something for yourself, Gordon. If you've got a lot of duplicates in the system and your data is being skewed, that could affect your decisions to renew with job boards, right?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, job board spend is a massive overhead for any recruitment business, and I think understanding a lot of it's to do with the process of not just understanding where those applications are coming from, but it's the decisions that you can make around that. So if you're not using an Idaboo, for example, and you're basically just advertising on X, Y, and Z job boards, and your recruiters are all telling you that we need to keep spending money with this job board because that's where all of our applications are coming from. And you might be right, the applications might be coming from that job board, but ultimately it's understanding what's behind that. So what I mean by that is that yes, job board X might be producing 50% of the applications, so everyone can see that the most applications are coming in from there. But using something like Anonymous will actually dig deeper into that and see how many of those applications are actually being out and out rejected, not even making it into the database, because they're just fundamentally not right for that type of role, or any role that recruitment business is going to place. And also then from that 50% of applications that came in from that one job board, how many are actually going into the shortlist, how many have got a chance of actually being placed in that role, and how many have just been added to the database, obviously with the whole deduping process that we've been talking about today. But another job board might only be producing 30% of the applications, but actually 80, 90% of those applications are going straight into the shortlist inside Bullhorn. So it's been able to understand not just where the applications are coming from, it's the quality of those applications and where those applications are going, and making sure then that when they do go through, that they are obviously the source has been tracked all the way right through to not even just placement, just even if they only made it to the shortlist, understanding that what job board they came from, was it their own website, was it a social media channel? So I think it's a lot to do with the processes behind that, and understanding where those applications are coming from as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, all really good points. So just to kind of to round things off towards the end here, go through the key takeaways from everything that we've discussed today. Firstly, unfortunately, duplicates are inevitable. There are solutions out there to minimize that as much as possible. Duplicates cause poor candidate experience, as well as reduced productivity for the consultants involved. You need a single source of truth. We've heard that multiple times from multiple different people on this call today. Merging duplicates can positively impact your revenue. Lisa spoke to that earlier, and act now, right? It's never too late to do it, and if you don't do it now, it's only going to get worse. So yeah, those are the main takeaways from the call today. And just to touch on something that we mentioned earlier on, or I mentioned earlier on, we have at Kyloe, we've developed a product called Data Tools. Data Tools has within it like a sub product called Duplicate. We created this because we spoke with hundreds of Bullhorn users around the world. One of the most common challenges they have and they struggle with is duplicates. So that's one of the reasons that we created Data Tools. It is the most powerful data management solution for Bullhorn users. You can use it to merge individual records. You can use it to merge up to 1,000 records at a time. That's candidates, contacts, and companies. You've got the option to merge them manually. You've got the option to merge them automatically on a schedule, so they're gone before they're ever a problem. You don't even know that they're there because it's happened overnight. And actually, one of my favorite things about it is that there's an undo button. So if you are brave enough to hit that schedule button and something goes wrong overnight because the weighting that you added to the product is not quite right, there's that undo button for peace of mind. And you can also use it to run searches that Bullhorn maybe doesn't allow you to, because it's not really a search, it's kind of a reverse search. So missing data like phone numbers, who doesn't have a phone number, who doesn't have a resume. And finally, you can use it to run mass data updates on your Bullhorn system. So that in the past would have to be an expensive job by a third party, or even by someone like us, an extremely time consuming or manual process as well. So all of this helps you to run successful automations, free up your consultants' time, generate more accurate reports, and all of it comes with you don't need any coding knowledge. So really, really powerful tool that we've created here at Kyloe. So let's have a quick look. Bear with me for a sec to go into the Q&A. I did check a minute ago. Okay, so there's 3 questions here, and I'll try and point these towards the right people on the call. If you have a major desire to answer them, please unmute yourself and call out. So first question. I'm nervous about doing damage to our database. How can I make sure I'm not doing anything wrong when merging records? I guess I'll take that initially, because one of the things I just touched on was if you are using a product like Duplicate, then it will allow you to hit the undo button. So you've done it, you've merged the record, you've realized it's wrong, hit the undo button, and everything is well with the world again. You don't have to worry about it. You said that getting rid of duplicates shouldn't be a one-time thing. How often should we look at our CRM to see if there are any duplicates? Lisa, do you want to take that one? I'll read it out again. So you said that getting rid of duplicates shouldn't be a one-time thing. How often should we look at our CRM to see if there are any duplicates?
For me, it's if I had my wicked way, recruiters would be KPI'd on their data hygiene. because they're being KPI'd on how much money they make and if data's worth money. So for me, it's looking on a weekly or monthly basis as to the state of the data that recruiters have got and how monetized it is. And we know that duplicate data actually costs money. So for me, it's a monthly thing. Retraining constantly and giving loose KPIs that surround the quality of the data on the system.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I would just follow on for that and say, yeah, how often would you look at the KPIs of your recruiters? Pretty frequently, I'd imagine, and then their sales performance. You'd look at those kind of things quite often. And back to Lisa's point from earlier, that is the money, that is the currency. The data is the currency, effectively that recruitment companies deal in. I think in the combination here is kind of twofold, though. You need to be checking regularly that the database and put software in place to fix it. But you need to look at the top of the funnel and make sure that duplicates aren't coming in as well. You need to count that hygiene is top and bottom. You can attack it from both sides there. So yeah, absolutely, you should look at your CRM database, but you need to continually be trying to stop it at source. And then it speeds up your time. Back to Rob's point about making more time in your day. You don't want to necessarily have to check for duplicates, so put process in place to stop it as much as you can.
Excellent, thank you. And someone, sorry, this person hasn't got a name on the question here, but do you need to be a data expert to use Kyloe's data tools? Absolutely not. No, I can use it. So that's probably your barometer for success there. You don't have to be a data expert at all. You don't have to do any coding. You don't have to do any scripting. It's a front-end tool that sits in a separate window to your Bullhorn database, but it connects to your Bullhorn server, and you absolutely do not have to be an expert to use it. Another anonymous one: how can we get our consultants to understand the importance of data hygiene? They don't see it as a priority, as they'd rather be spending time speaking with clients and candidates. That's probably another one for you, Lisa, if you don't mind.
Read it out again for me, because that felt a bit
sorry. How can we get our consultants to understand the importance of data hygiene? They don't see it as a priority, as they'd rather be spending time speaking with clients and candidates.
For me, it's just getting some really cool data together, some stats together about how it could slow them down. And feeding that back to them on a regular basis. I mean, for me, habits take a little while to change, often around a month. So if you just make it your mission and your culture that data is worth some money in your business, and just don't make it dull either. Data can be exciting, she says, when you make money from it. So for me, it just needs to become part of the culture. If it's not in the system, it doesn't exist. I mean, some businesses have a carrot approach, some have a stick approach. I like a bit of both, if I'm honest. But again, if what you do is you come off this webinar and you say to everybody, write down tools, everyone's working 24-hour days to clean up the data, you'll lose everyone at hello. Whereas if what you do is you create scenarios where clean data created more wealth and mental well-being within the business, and you repeat those constantly, and it becomes the breath and the heartbeat of the business, then that's a good use of your time. Just be careful, but be consistent. That's what training needs to be, isn't it, really?
From my experience on that, and I totally agree with that from my experience, I think the reason why data isn't fun is that people don't know why they're doing it sometimes. Like, they don't understand like the value of putting in a postcode or something like that. It's like what looks like an innocuous field. They don't understand the reason behind it. And I think, the way I've always tried to bring teams on when it's coming to data is to say, yeah, but that field, when you do this is what marketing use it for. They actually use it to send very specific targeted campaigns out to this type of client or this type of candidate. And when that works, they pick up the phone and phone you and give you jobs, or, that you get better candidates by doing that. And I think you've got to take people on that like data journey with you to understand that their actions are having upstream actions somewhere else. I think in any business, that's a kind of vital conversation to have with your teams. People need to understand why they're doing things.
Absolutely.
I think something I'd like to add to that as well is the person who asked the question said they'd rather be spending time speaking with clients and candidates. I think it's very important to understand that more conversations isn't necessarily better than good quality conversations. And good quality conversations always tie back to data. If you've got someone in a business that's making 40 calls a day versus someone doing 20 calls a day, If you look at the metrics around those calls, the person doing 20 calls could be having 10 of those conversations over 5 minutes. 10 of those had a direct outcome. And you can always tie that back to data. So I think it's, yes, they want to spend a lot of time on the phone, but time isn't everything.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, there's 2 more questions here that I can answer pretty quickly. One from Carrie Abraham Hoffman. Thank you, Carrie. Can the Kyloe product merge custom object data? The answer is yes, it can on candidates and contacts. Not on companies, but on candidates and contacts, it can. And Noreen Sweeney from Clark Recruitment. Thank you, Noreen. Can you run a report on Bullhorn that shows you duplicates? I don't think you can, is the answer to that question. I don't think there's a native report that allows you to list all of the duplicates in your system. That would be something that you needed a product like Duplicate to do. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we've gone through. I think that's pretty much bang on target, 4:45. So yeah, that's all we've got time for now. Hopefully everyone that joined, thank you for joining us, has picked up some tips today. Thanks for your questions. If there are any that come in whilst we wrap up here, we'll reach out to you directly afterwards and answer them. So yeah, please feel free to reach out if anybody has heard anything that they like about the Duplicate product or any of the other solutions on the call today. Then please do get in touch with anyone here. Thanks very much to everyone that joined. Thank you to Lisa, to Robert, to Gordon, and Matt, and thanks for everyone attending. And see you in our next webinar. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.